Guys, I'm having this problem with my printer. Did you dry your filament? I can't take this anymore.
Filament dryers are overrated. There I said it, which is not the same as saying they are useless, so let me explain. Here I have two benchies. One of them was printed with dry filament, the other one with filament that sat in the open for months. So which one is which? But you already know it's a trap, right? So leave me your best guess of what happened in the comments and I'll get back to that later. What led me to make this video was a post on the German 3D printing subreddit where somebody had ugly top layers and was asking for help. Now if you have some experience, you might already spot what's going on. He either needs more infill or more top layers. The first comment, did you dry your filament? And it drives me nuts. It's the equivalent of telling somebody having issues with their diet to eat more protein. It is a factor, but it's often not the problem. In another comment, he showed his infill and it had huge gaps in between. So you could dry your filament all you want, it would not help at all. This is truly a case of if you only got a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. I saw posts of people worrying which filament dryer to get before they even bought a printer. When I first got into 3D printing, moisture and filament wasn't talked about much at all. PLA is usually fine, ABS doesn't care at all, and the only real offender is PETG. I'm not sure if the reason is the rising popularity of PETG or just the industry trying to sell you more stuff. After all, they're paying good money for those sponsorships. I know because my inbox is full of them too. But I only sell my own products, so if you want to help this channel out, check out the link in the description. Its hygroscopic nature is also the reason that I don't think that PETG is the all ends meet all filament. I got a dry box that I paid for with my own money and I very rarely use it. It has its place, but it's usually not necessary. There are filaments which are highly susceptible to moisture, namely nylon and polycarbonate, but most people don't even touch those materials. My own spools I only ever dried once and I'm since printing out of this box that I filled with silica. Back then I dried them in the oven and I'm not even sure if most filament dryers can even reach the temperature necessary for those filaments. Of course it's never a bad idea to store your filaments dry and I do so myself for many of my spools, but it's gotten a bit out of hand so I ran out of boxes. But PLA and especially ABS don't really care about moisture and are fine in most situations. So please stop blaming everything on moist filament. It is an issue, but it's usually not the cause of your problem. Some of the issues you can get with moist filament, even if your slicer settings are perfect, are bubbly surfaces, weak layer adhesion and stringing. Some stringing can also be normal with perfectly dry filament and perfect slicer settings. You cannot always prevent everything. I also recommend not relying heavily on pre-built slicer profiles. Now they are usually fine, but they also have a few downsides because they're made for fail-safeness and not for the best printing results. Like for example the Z-lift I like to rant about. It is made for fail-safe to not knock over parts, but it also reduces the print quality. Same goes for retraction settings and flex profiles, which is usually set to 0 to not jam the system, but it also degrades the print quality quite a lot and causes heavy stringing. I made a whole video about the most important settings in slicing that I could think of. You can usually approach issues with a few very simple steps. Does the same print you sliced before now look worse? It might be an issue of the filament, but it might also be wear on your printer. Try swapping out the nozzle for example. Nozzles are cheap and if this didn't solve your issue, just put the old one back in. Now for the conclusion of the two benchies I showed you, this one is the one printed with perfectly dry filament. It was printed on a Bowden system with a 1mm nozzle and I couldn't get rid of all the stringing. You can tell the nozzle was huge because of the pole that is missing back here. It can only be printed with a smaller nozzle size. Now this one was printed with moist filament that was sitting on a shelf in a room with a fish tank for months. Apart from the stringing, the print quality really doesn't look that bad. And here's the same benchy that I printed after drying the filament. You can see it looks much better, but it still has some minor stringing going on inside here. The horrible benchy was printed years ago already, but I purchased all of those spools in 2020 when we printed face shields for the pandemic. Since the benchy was specifically designed to show issues with your 3D printer, you will usually not see the same issues with more technical parts, like this one where there's virtually no bridging necessary. The point I'm trying to make, moisture is usually not the big issue that it's made out to be, especially if you're not printing detailed figurines. Don't try to approach a complex system with a narrow-minded view where your only solution is drying your filament. Hope that helps.